I'm a daughter of this area. I live a couple of blocks from here in a house where I've lived for 42 years on Beards Hill Road. The house is 92 years old now, and yesterday the doorknob to the entrance door came off in my hand. The place needs work. When my family brought me home from the hospital, they brought me to 125 Post Road in Aberdeen, in the eastern part of Aberdeen, near where Steve said he lived when he was running for Aberdeen Town Commission, and across the street from Ryan Burby's mother. Well, by the time the third child came along, we moved to a big Victorian house a couple of blocks from here on West Bel Air Avenue. And my mother was a citizenship teacher. My welcoming outlook toward people who come to this country comes from my mother's welcoming and teaching people over 20 years what the American government was like, how they could pass this citizenship test, and how they could participate as citizens. I'm the daughter of 3 farming families in Harford County. When my great-grandfather, Thomas Burling Grafton, was running for county commissioner, he was a farmer in Hickory. He came to Aberdeen and out to our family farm that's about a mile outside of town, and met with my great-grandfather, Luther Stewart Osborne. And Luther took him around Aberdeen and introduced him to people. And then he sent him down to Perryman, where Robert Clinton Cronin Sr. took him around the Perryman and Bush River Peninsula area. All 3 of those men were Democrats, and all 3 of those men were my great-grandfathers. And they were all in politics. We had a diary that came from my great-grandfather, Luther Osborne, about that particular day. And it was written, of course, before my parents were born, let alone married, let alone I was born. But I am running because I think we need progressive leadership in the Senate seat in Harford County. And I filed for office with the intention of running against Bob Casley, who has distinguished himself as an angry, white, right-wing Republican. I've known Bob since he was in high school. He was in my Foxfire Club when I taught at Bel Air High School. And I'm very surprised to read and hear the things that he says. It's carving out of a most unpleasant spot in the Maryland Senate. And I think we need a Democrat for this district, and I think we need a person who is experienced. It's wonderful to hear Allison's new voice in politics, and I wish you the very best and much success in the 1st district. But the Senate seat is of a different nature. The Senate seat, the senator is asked about appointments by the governor. There's a lot of deference given to a senator in each of the senators. When I was in the House of Delegates, I used to think of them as an unruly classroom of 47 people, whereas we were much more orderly in the House. But there's a lot of independence, a lot of independent spirit, and you need somebody coming out of Harford County who has experience, has good judgment, knows the community, knows the people, has respect for the people, and has independence to represent the community well. I'm running as well because our schools need help. When I started out in politics and served on the county council in the late 70s and early 80s, our schools were in the same funding position that they are now. That is, we were 3rd from the bottom in funding done by our local government compared to the other local governments in the state. And we did get a pro-education majority to the council. We raised our funding up to 14th, which was closer to the wealth of the people of Harford County, and we gave what we felt was a launch for an outstanding education system. And it has been an outstanding education system, but under the Republicans in Harford County, the funding has slipped back down relatively to other counties to 3rd from the bottom. Tom Fitzpatrick tells me, and Tom is trying very hard on the Board of Education. We have coming in the pipeline the Kirwan Commission report, which is proposing to bring a lot more funding at the state level for education, to overhaul the methods by which schools are governed, and to improve the status of the teaching profession, to make teachers more like college professors, and try to build a world-class education system for Maryland. The only world-class education system now among the states is in Massachusetts. And Maryland was able to perform first over several years during the O'Malley administration, first in the country. But under Republicans, we have slipped. And I want to go to the Senate to make sure that I can vote for that Kirwan Commission package. They put out a preliminary report in January, and during the interim, they're going to continue to meet and put out a final report, which will be considered by the General Assembly. Gordon Kreamer said to me, people want to hear what you're going to do in the future. Last night I was in the library working on some questionnaires. There are a lot of questionnaires that come into the General Assembly where groups try to get you to vote ahead of time so they can, corner you on issues. So I'm working on these questionnaires, and who should come in but Delegate Glenn Glass. He came over to me and he said, so you're running for office? I said, yes, I'm running for the Senate. He said, well, you voted for the rain tax, didn't you? I said, no, Glenn, I did not. I wasn't in the General Assembly then. I served in the General Assembly from 1982 to 1990. We didn't vote on the rain tax at that time. He said, well, if you'd been in the General Assembly, you would have voted for it. I said, you don't know that. That man's been in for 2 terms. There's a good reason why our delegate candidates have got to succeed. So, never mind about the rain tax. I mean, Cassandra Beverly, an outstanding candidate, was defeated on the rain tax. I mean, give me a break. So, we've got to look at what are going to be our challenges in the next term. And he said you always should ask the question, what can I do for you? Well, please tell me what you can do for me. I've been running a door-to-door campaign, and I need to do better about the social media possibilities to expand the access to the message. But in a door-to-door campaign, I'm trying to have thoughtful conversations with people in which I ask them, what can I do for you? And people tell me about what's important to them. And there was an elderly woman the other day, she said, I raised my children long ago, but education is still important to me. You know why education is important, in my opinion? Because it's about hope. It's about we are going to provide for our children to have a better life because we're going to give them the skills that they can, by which they can succeed in the modern era, in a new generation. And that's why we've got to overhaul our schools, and we've got to provide funding that gives equity in education. 3 counties in the Eastern Shore have 100% of their students on free and reduced price lunches. So that's how big an issue it is of those counties need help in the Eastern Shore. And within Harford County, 34% of our families are sending students to school who are on free and reduced price lunches and breakfasts, and that means we have socioeconomic challenges within our county, and so the additional equity levers that are going to be proposed by the and have been proposed by the Kirwan Commission will help us here in Harford County. We've depended on the property tax. We need to draw from our wealth that comes from additional sources from the property tax. And I think a lot of us thought that in changing over to a casino state, that we were going to have a very well-funded school system. I was not for the casinos, but I thought, well, if they're going to do it, let it do some good for the schools. And yet I talked with candidates from Prince George's County who said that with National Harbor money, that when it reaches a certain level, it doesn't go to the schools. I don't know where that money is going, but that money needs to go to the schools, not only in Prince George's, but the casino money needs to go to schools throughout the state. We have other challenges as well. Our transportation infrastructure needs to be improved. Fortunately, and when I was in the House of Delegates, we brought the MARC service here, but it needs to be increased in its number of trains that are available and number of weekend trains so that we can be participating in tourism in addition to the stadium, our own stadium. And you know, one thing I thought about when I thought this, and I've heard from many people saying, this is a year when women can get elected, women Democrats can get elected. I thought, you know, this Senate seat ought to go to a woman Democrat who has done something for women. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I did for women when I served in the Maryland Commission for Women and in the County Council and in the House of Delegates. In the County Council, I tried to make sure that employee benefits were improved for women and the salaries were improved in female-dominated jobs. In the Maryland Commission for Women, I headed a comparable worth coalition. Now, comparable worth is like advanced pay equity. It's not only do you pay equally for the same job, but you pay equally for the jobs that have equal complexity, effective actions, and 5 different job evaluation factors by which the worth of jobs is measured. And it was a 10-year project, but at the end of 10 years, I got legislation passed in the General Assembly that hired contractors to do 2 job evaluation studies. Those job evaluation studies showed that the differences in pay could not be attributed to anything besides discrimination. The discrimination was remedied with increases in pay for professions like librarians and nurses and healthcare workers and other jobs that were held by 70% women or minorities. All of those jobs, their pay was brought up to parity. At the time that I was working on it, the cry was, women are making 59 cents on the dollar. Now the cry is women are making 80 cents on the dollar. So there's still a 20% discrepancy. But these are things that I worked on. I put money in paychecks. I also sponsored family leave for public employees, state employees, and then it filtered into the counties, and even the city of Aberdeen has family leave. And we started it at the state level. In addition, I was pro-choice floor leader, and we had, where every time a new General Assembly comes in, there's going to be a battle about the issue of choice. They need to have a reliable representative who will be pro-choice, and my record is reliably that I'm pro-choice, and that I was a floor leader on that issue. In addition, I worked on labor issues. Working women are working people, and working people have share broad similar concerns. In the past, I have been endorsed by the AFL-CIO. This time, they're looking, I think, for the primary results. So I hope to be able to go back and say, okay, come in now, because I've got to beat this conservative Republican. And here's the significance of this Senate seat in District 34. The President of the Senate wants to have a veto-proof majority in case whoever our Democratic nominee for governor cannot win that seat. We hope that our Democratic nominee can win that seat, and we're all going to be working to help that come true. But we must have a veto-proof Senate and a veto-proof House. And the votes are very tight in the Senate now, and he expects to lose a couple of seats in the rest of the state, and he hopes to pick up the District 34 as a Democratic Senate seat. Now, why do you think that's a possibility? Because we've been stuck with Republican senators for decades. It's a possibility because of Democratic registration. We no longer are saddled with the Cecil County portion. All of the 34th District is in Harford County, and it's roughly the same area that I represented when I was in the House of Delegates. It's most of the Route 40 corridor and the Route 24 corridor. So there are 9,000 more registered Democrats than there are registered Republicans in District 34. There's also a significant number of independents. So the challenge after the primary is going to be get all our Democrats out and attract the independents and progressive Republicans to support me. So it's really going to be a 2-stage battle. But it's a battle worth fighting. And if you think that the Senate seat should be held by somebody with experience, here's my experience. 2 terms, 4-year terms, appointed by 2 governors to the Maryland Commission for Women. 1 term in the county council, where I was elected countywide in those days to represent District E. The first woman elected. My friend Barbara Reisacker got elected in the general, but I got elected in the primary. In those days, we didn't have Republican opponents. And 2 terms in the House of Delegates, and subsequently 5 terms in the Democratic Central Committee. So I do bring the experience, and I've been going door to door over the last 5 years for Democratic candidates, myself and other candidates, and during the past year, that 5th year has been the listening campaign on behalf of the Democratic Party to find out what do the low-performing voters want us to do? What do they want us to work on? And they do recognize that the Democratic Party is the party of the people, the party that's going to look out for the concerns and the needs of the common person. And they do recognize that, they do feel that education is important to them, and they also feel that health care is important. And then public safety is important to them. So I've been listening, I've been working. I'm coming tonight hoping to enlist you to help my campaign. Would you like to put up a sign for my campaign? Would you like to volunteer? I need you. And thank you for the opportunity.